So now I'd like to talk about what the scientific literature says is the best protocol for initiating our goal pursuit, for starting toward our goal. And to do so, we have to address a set of key questions. The questions you have to ask yourself are, do I want to pursue this goal? Meaning, am I highly motivated to pursue this goal, or even mildly motivated to pursue this goal? Do I want to do the things involved to get this thing, to accomplish this thing? Or am I feeling resistance? Do I not want to pursue this goal? Or perhaps this is a day-to-day shift that occurs where some days you're really motivated and other days you are not. Now, the reason to ask yourself this set of questions is that the data say that there are two different strategies, in fact, two markedly different strategies that you'll want to incorporate depending on whether or not you're motivated or you are unmotivated to pursue that particular goal for whatever reason. And of course, there's an entire psychology to motivation, and you could get a therapist or a coach to work with in order to address that underlying psychology. Yes, it might ladder back to childhood issues. It might ladder back to esteem things. None of that can be covered here in any sort of meaningful depth because, frankly, we each have different circumstances, different pasts, different psychologies. There are, however, some universals that we can all apply in order to help us get started toward our goal. And this is nested in this whole concept of whether or not we should visualize the end and successful completion of our goal, so keep the end in mind as we start off toward a goal, or whether or not we should incorporate a different strategy. Here's how it goes. So if you ask yourself, do I want to achieve this goal? And I would hope the answer is yes, because the overall goal should be something that you want to pursue. It should be something that you are deeply desiring to accomplish. Then you have to ask yourself next, do I want to do the things required to achieve that goal? Now, maybe you don't want to do all of them. You only want to do some of them. But given that you've now carefully quantified which specific actions you're going to be doing on which days and for how many hours and how many weeks for these 12-week blocks, you could simply ask yourself, do I want to do this thing today? And if the answer is yes, well, then it turns out that spending just 1 to 3, maybe 5 minutes, but even just 1 minute visualizing the outcome, the positive outcome, of course, and the feeling state that you may have, because of course you don't know, you don't have a time machine, you can't feel yourself into the future, but you can make a good guess as to how you might feel in the future if you accomplish that goal. Spending 1 to 3, maybe 5 minutes in a sort of meditation, although sort of a visualization is perhaps the better way to describe it, thinking about that feeling state and the outcome and some of the things that are going to be associated with that outcome turns out to be a great practice to engage in just prior to initiating that day's work toward that goal. However, if you arrive to your practice, meaning you show up to the piano to learn piano, or you're sitting down to the table, or maybe you haven't even gotten enough motivation to go toward the piano or toward your notebook or computer or whatever landscape it is that you are going to be pursuing your goal within, and you are having, quote unquote, a hard time getting motivated toward that goal, well, then it turns out, what the scientific literature tells us, is that visualizing the end, keeping the end in mind, positive visualization of all the good things that you'll experience when you achieve that goal, is not going to be an effective strategy to motivate you. Rather, if you are not feeling motivated, then what the scientific literature tells us is that you actually want to spend 1 to 3, maybe 5 minutes visualizing failure, visualizing how terrible you will feel if you do not achieve your goal, visualizing severe consequences, perhaps mostly of the sort like telling yourself, gosh, I set a goal, I set a 12-week block, I quantify it, I know I want to do this, here I have the time to do it, and I'm simply just not doing it. And in that case, you would think, okay, well, you should kind of build yourself up, maybe call a friend, text a friend, get some encouragement. No. The scientific literature tells us that when we are not motivated, and it is a goal that we actually want to pursue, and of course here I'm talking about adaptive goal pursuit, meaning things that are going to enrich your mental health, physical health, etc., not things that are going to be detrimental to us. Well then, if you're not feeling motivated, you want to spend 1 to 3, perhaps 5 minutes meditating, concentrating on what it's going to feel like to fail, and the fact that you are not succeeding, but indeed that you are failing. And I know this sounds like rather harsh advice, that this protocol sounds like kind of a self-flagellating protocol. It's not intended to be self-flagellation. In fact, it should not be self-flagellation. but rather what you want to do when you are not motivated is to think about failure and what that failure at the end of 12 weeks will feel like. And the reason for that is that the data tell us that when we visualize positive outcomes, yes, it deploys certain neurochemicals in our brain and body that make us feel good. Although, frankly, if you've heard that imagining something creates the same neurochemical and neural circuit states in the brain as actually experiencing that thing, that is simply not true. That's a myth. That's simply not true. But if you are having a hard time getting motivated toward a goal that you actually want to achieve, then spending that short amount of time thinking about how lousy you'll feel when you don't achieve it recruits certain elements of your so-called autonomic nervous system. It creates shifts in the release of things like epinephrine, norepinephrine, even release of the so-called reward molecule, dopamine, which in fact is not the molecule of reward. It is the molecule of motivation, and it's associated with pain. It's associated with negative thoughts. And of course, it's associated with positive thoughts and outcomes. But basically what I'm saying is, if you're highly motivated to do something, you're ready to go, spend 1 to 3 minutes, maybe 5, visualizing the positive outcomes that you're going to experience when you ultimately finish out that 12-week cycle as a consequence of all the great work that you've done. If, however, you are not motivated, you're feeling like, I don't want to do this thing, I'm procrastinating, I'm just not feeling like doing it. Yes, I want to achieve the goal, but I just don't feel like doing it. Well, then your task is to take 1 to 3, maybe 5 minutes and think about how much more lousy you will feel when you do not achieve that goal at the end of 12 weeks. And that, the data tell us, recruits certain elements of your nervous system, your hormonal system, that are more successful in getting you into action, into starting toward your goal, than were you to try and build yourself up towards all that positivity. So yes, indeed, there is a place for negative thinking.